Jim was walking back alone to his home late at night. His steps were drunken and uneven. The earth beneath him was shaking, and the road was blurry. He recalls what led to his sad state. In the morning, he and his wife were invited to a party with his childhood friend. His friend Michael was a successful dentist and had recently opened his second practice in the city. They arrived late in the evening at the party. Michael welcomed both of them with a warm hug. "Congratulations on your new clinic. Now it is even closer to my home," Jim said. Now you have no excuse not to visit. Why don't you come this weekend? I'll give you a free checkup." "Yeah, I meant to come. I have had pain in my upper front tooth for a week," Jim said. "Then come tomorrow," Michael said. "He has been complaining about the teeth for 10 days now," Jim's wife said. Michael laughed. "Make yourself at home," Michael said. "Why don't you make yourself a drink?" he said, pointing towards his home bar. The bar was decorated with expensive-looking imported bottles of liqueur. Like trophies, one wins when he has won a lot in life. Jim was hesitant to pick an expensive bottle. So he opened a bottle from the bottom shelf and poured himself a drink. He looked at the party from a distance. Both of them started from the same spot, and yet, the chasm between them grew deeper with each passing year. Michael had a beautiful wife, a big house, and 4 luxury cars. Jim was a stock trader, and after the market crash, he had lost a lot. So now he drank. He drank to dampen the regret of the past and anxiety of the present. Jim poured himself another drink. Michael was sitting between Pam and his wife. Pam, who was Michael's wife, was taller than Jim's wife. She was more beautiful in every way. She was wearing a long flowing red dress with crystal white sandals. Her eyes shine like 2 blue moons. She was also a dentist and was in charge of Michael's second clinic. Jim wondered if things would be different if she was his wife instead. In all their Facebook photographs he stalked, they always looked so happy together. Michael laughed an obnoxious loud laugh like the rich people do. They all laugh like that, baring their teeth to the world, Jim thought. Jim poured himself another drink. Michael was talking to everyone. His lips moved violently, telling his stories of conquest. How the interior of his new clinic cost thousands and even millions. He boasted about the sofa and shouted about the chandelier. Jim poured himself another drink. Suddenly, Michael looked at Jim, standing near the bar alone, and laughed his obnoxious laugh at him. He stood up between the 2 wives and walked up to him. "Hello, man. Why are you standing here alone?" he said. "Oh, you drank all my Blue Label whiskey," he said, pointing towards the nearly empty bottle on the table. "I didn't know about this." "I found it under the table," Jim said. His words slipped carelessly from his lips. He was surprised that he nearly finished the bottle. He was so deep in thought that he didn't even notice that. "That was the most expensive bottle I had," Michael exclaimed loudly. "And you drank it all," he said. He laughed loudly. Jim looked around in embarrassment. Everyone in the party was staring at him. "You need to stop drinking or your life will stay a mess," Michael said. He looked back at Pam, and she smiled back at him. He walked back to her. His slow walk had the confidence of a winner. Jim gripped the bottle and clenched his teeth. He looked at Pam and Michael together. He turned to the bar full of golden bottles, then threw the empty bottle at the bar as hard as he could. The room shook with a loud explosion, and the floor was filled with shattered glass. Shards shined like stars and floated in the galaxy of expensive booze. Jim's wife ran and held his hand. "Let's go home," she said. "You had enough." "Let go of me." He shrugged his hand off her and walked out the front door. And now he was out alone in January cold and fog. The street was dimly lit and ghost quiet. He knew he had a long way to go. He puffed up his collar and picked up the pace. That's the problem with money, he thought. When you have it, you start to think you are better than everyone else. He regretted not throwing that bottle on Michael's face. Jim walked with heavy steps into a dim-lit alley. The cold wind blew on his face. His teeth chattered furiously. That hurt his front teeth. Michael could have written some medicine for my sensitive teeth at the party, he thought. But no, he wanted me to visit his fancy new clinic for that. What an asshole. Jim punches the air, imagining Michael's face hanging in the mist. He even wrestled and tackled the air, beating the pavement with his kicks. Suddenly, he heard something behind him. It was a street dog, a brown fur mutt. His face looked serious and his eyes suspicious. Street dogs don't trust strangers in their alleys, Jim thought. "All right," he said. "I'll get out of your alley," Jim said loudly. He picked up the pace and wrapped his muffler around his neck one more time. After walking a distance, he looked behind. The dog's eyes shined in a golden glow. He looked at his watch. It was midnight. He resumed walking swiftly. "My wife could have taken my side," he thought. "It was you who offered him a drink," she could have said to Michael. But she didn't support me. She never does, he thought. He punched the air again. He looked behind. The golden eyes shined even brighter. Jim froze in fear. The eyes appeared larger and were placed much higher up from ground level. He stood there and thinking, maybe waiting for them to be something other, maybe 2 light bulbs perhaps. He turned around and started sprinting. He could hear something following him. He stopped and looked behind. The golden bright eyes were now hung much higher. They were bigger and closer too. The fog was so dense that he could see nothing around him except them. Suddenly he heard a deep growl. He turned around and ran. He ran like never before. Heavy footsteps of a beast followed behind him. All of a sudden he trips and falls on his face. When he opened his eyes, the pavement was covered with blood. He coughs out blood and spits out his 2 front teeth on his bloodied hand. He looks at them with a shaky vision. He hears heavy footsteps closing in from behind. He hears a loud, obnoxious laughter.